welcome to Crosspoint. My name is Eric, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. How to be more human. In fact, did you know that in a recent survey, over 75% of adults report symptoms of stress, including headache, tiredness, sleeping problems? I sound like a fine print of one of those pharmaceutical ads. It seems like nearly everyone is either stressed out, exhausted, or just struggling to keep up with everything. We can't catch a breath, and even if we do, it's pretty short-lived. So I have a very important question for you. What if you don't have to feel this way? What if you found a way to live that was filled with peace and life instead of hurry and stress? If you recently asked yourself any of these questions, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about this today as we kick off a brand new series, The Burnout Society, so stick around. Now, whether you're here every week or you're just tuning in for the very first time, we're excited that you're here today, and we would love to connect with you. Now, the best way to do that is to simply scan the QR code or to fill out the form next to the stream and take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself. And if it's your first time with us, we'll send a gift to you in the upcoming week as our way of saying thank you for checking out this church for the first time, which we think is pretty cool. And as you're doing that, in addition to this service, there's lots of ways to connect throughout the week. First, we've got 3 amazing personal and spiritual growth opportunities coming up. 2 opportunities for parents. First, the Nurtured Heart approach to parenting. This course will equip you with the skills and vocabulary needed to grow the inner wealth and unleash the greatness inside you as a parent. And second, Parenting Through Strengths Parent Workshop, where you'll discover the hardwiring of your students and how to parent toward and build these hardwired strengths. And last, if you'd like to discover your own unique wiring and how to live that out in a unique way that God has hardwired you, check out the Discover Your Strengths Adult Workshop. You can find all of this under What's Happening at our website. Next, you ever have questions about faith and doubts, or wonder about things like our existence? Is Jesus reliable? Did God really create the entire world, or is it just some random coincidence? If so, you're going to want to check out Faith and Doubt Night coming to Crosspoint Saturday, May 18th. We'll be having a conversation between a Christian humanist, a secular humanist, and a pastor, an evening on God and the big questions that you have. This is an evening of truth-seeking amongst friends, plus a rally to end modern slavery, meaning while the event is free, donations will be received and 100% will go towards combating human trafficking and modern-day slavery, something we can all agree on regardless of where we are in terms of faith. Plus, we're going to have an after-party, pub theology style, where you can ask questions, enjoy a beer or non-alcoholic beverage, and continue the conversation. Sign up today, let us know you're coming, and invite your friends. All right, we've got a great service for you today. We're going to be diving into how to find more peace and more life through opting out of the Burnout Society. So let's head to the venue.
What you just saw was just a glimpse of the incredible weekend that we had last week here at Crosspoint as we celebrated Easter. So many stories that we are still so excited about, but of course, nothing that we're celebrating more than those 19 people who stepped into new life, who walked the waters of baptism. Can we just give it up for them? I think some are actually in the room right now. So exciting, so exciting. And hey, speaking of online, can we also make some noise for those who are joining us online right now from wherever you are tuning in this week? We're so glad that you're here, so glad that you are also here in the room as we jump into this new series that we are calling the Burnout Society. Stress, exhaustion, and what on earth can we do about it? And my name's Abbie, by the way, super excited to be here with you. And you know, as we get ready to jump into this topic, I just want to apologize in advance that I know that this is probably something that's not going to be super relevant for a lot of us. I'm kidding. This is probably going to be relevant for most of us. But to get us started, I want you to imagine for a minute that there is a gas tank on the inside of you. And when it comes to things like stress and exhaustion, my question for you is, how you doing? What would that gas tank look like for you these days? Where are your levels at as you're walking in here? Maybe you're coming in here and you're like, you know what, I'm maxing, I'm relaxing, I'm pretty much at full, life's good these days. Or maybe you sputtered in here running on empty. Anybody need me to call AAA to get you home today? I've got some experience with that. As an actual driver, I am typically a gas tank optimist, which means I'm one of those people who, if the flashing light is telling me I've got 5 miles left before the car is gonna just run out of gas, I'm like, oh, we can make it 7 miles. We'll be fine. Let's just keep going. We got this. Anybody else with me on that? Anybody person B in this graph? Yeah. Others of you in the room are like sweating as I just talk about this because you just can't imagine the anxiety of getting below half a tank. And congratulations, by the way, for having your life together. I have no idea what that's like, but I'm sure it's great for you. So maybe, someday we'll get there. But if I'm honest, not only am I a gas tank optimist when it comes to my car, I'm also a gas tank optimist when it comes to what's going on internally. See, my default approach to life is to kind of just feel like things are half full, to be like, you know what, we're fine, it's all good, let's keep moving. And, a couple of years ago, I was in the midst of a really difficult season, but I was trying to convince myself that it was just normal. And in the midst of that, I came across this list from Carrie Nieuwhof, this list of burnout warning signs. And I felt personally offended at first as I started going through this list and realizing, man, I'm checking every one of those boxes right now. It was this wake-up call moment for me. And, in retrospect, there were plenty of flashing light, you need to refuel signs earlier that I could have caught. Moments like this when my friend was taking pictures of my family with my newborn son, and she captured this look on my face directed at my husband. To be full disclosure, this was actually a little bit before this season, but I'm sure I was serving a lot of these looks to people during this time of burnout. But as I looked through this list, here's what became really clear to me. It was time for me to pay attention to my internal gas tank. And if you're here today and as you look at this, you're like, man, I am resonating with this more than I wish I was. If you're walking in here feeling burnt out, I just want to say to you, welcome to the club. This is the Burnout Society Club meeting number 1 today. And I'm so glad that you're here because there's a lot that I've learned in the time since I first came across this list. And one of the things is that one of the primary messages that we actually see all throughout Scripture, all throughout the Bible, is actually an antidote to this way of living. So many times we see God calling out, hey, I know that this is how the world works, but I actually have another option for you. Another way of being that you can access. And I want to show you how. And so that's where we're heading today, but let's take a minute. I would love to pray for us as we get ready to jump into this. God, thank you that wherever we are coming into this moment, this space today, God, that you are the God who sees. You're the God who sees us, who knows everything that we have been walking through. God, you know where our internal levels are, how we're doing as we come in today. And God, you also know that in this conversation about burnout and stress and exhaustion, you know as we know that this is not a one-size-fits-all conversation. That each one of us is unique. We have unique limitations, unique life experiences, and there's so much that's particular to who we are when we talk about this. And there's this temptation for us to compare ourselves to the people around us. And so, God, I pray in these moments as we begin to dive into this conversation, God, would you help us to resist that temptation and instead to see the invitation that you are putting in front of each one of us individually. God, would you help us to see what it is that you want to show me, what you want to show us in these moments together. Amen. So if you're wondering the reason that we are jumping into a series like this one, you may already know that burnout is this thing that is becoming this increasingly pervasive thing in our culture. It's almost become a default. what we call normal, a normal pace, a normal load to carry, normally leads to burnout. And this is true all across the board. It doesn't matter who you are or how old you are, what you do with your life. It doesn't matter if you're single or married, if you have kids or not, if you're working or not. From students all the way to seniors, people are getting burnt out. We all can resonate to this feeling that this kid describes.
Do you hear me? I'm quaky, I'm tired, I worked hard at school. Okay?
All right, so what? You don't want me to mess with you tonight?
No. I'm quaky, I'm tired, I worked hard at school. What's
You're not going to wrestle here in a little bit?
Well, maybe.
Oh.
If I stop getting cranky and tired.
Gotta stop getting cranky. We've been saying, well, maybe, all week at my house. I love that. We all have off days. We all have days where we're tired, and really, we're partially talking about that, but more than that, we're talking about when that starts to become the default of our lives, when that starts to become the norm, the temperature that we live in. And again, more and more people are experiencing this. If we're not intentional, this is where the pace of our culture leads us. And so my question is, who can we blame this on? Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to take all the responsibility for this myself. I'd like to pin it on someone or something. And, there's a lot of culprits that we could point to. One obvious one is technology. We know that when it comes to burnout levels, technology often is not our friend. Even simple inventions like the light bulb have this way of opening up so many loads of possibility, how much work we're able to do. Have you ever thought about how all of our favorite inventions are actually the ones that allow us to just blow right through the limits that we used to have? It's crazy, right? In a few weeks, we're going to come back to this because there's a lot to unpack when it comes to phones and how screens relate to the Burnout Society. But the truth is, technology is just one piece of a much larger story of how we've gotten to where we are. I discovered this interesting research recently where they claimed that you can actually trace the moment that anxiety, depression, really burnout began to rise in the West. And it was the moment that we transitioned into what they call an achievement society. See, before this, for most of history, people mostly just did what they should do. Your life, in many ways, was decided in advance for you. Your work was likely going to be kind of whatever the family business was or whatever just the norm path was for you. Marriages were often arranged, or there was a much smaller pool of people that you were choosing from. So much was determined in advance, and so the world kind of operated on this should mentality. But that's not the world we live in anymore, right? And now, in this achievement societies, all of those limits have been blown up. And here's what's fascinating about this to me. What the claim that they make is that we are not overwhelmed by negativity. It feels that way sometimes. When we turn on the news, when we read the headlines and we see all of these things, it feels like, oh, this is why I'm feeling so burnt out. But they say, no, that's not actually where burnout comes from. That affects us. We get sad about it, and it plays a role. But burnout actually doesn't come from negativity. Burnout comes most often from positivity, from possibility. You're not burnt out because of a lack of options in your life. You're burnt out because we're living in this land of seemingly unlimited possibilities, and we're all trying to figure it out. See, before, people were trapped by the ceiling and there weren't enough options. And I'm not at all suggesting that we need to go back there. But what's important here is to name where we are now and to realize that often now in our society, we are trapped by the exact opposite. We're trapped by the weight and the pressure that comes from the burden of a life without a fixed destiny. See, in the Burnout Society, we're chasing something, and often we don't even know what it is. We just know that we've got to have a better life than what we currently have, that we need to keep running and keep chasing so that we can have a better life than our neighbors or maybe a better life than what our parents had. And this is how we get tired. This is how you go broke, searching for God knows what. It's actually our fear of underperforming that has made us overwhelmed, that's caused us to overspend, overexert ourselves, overschedule. Because in a world without limits, what do? We just keep pushing. We try to take it to the limit. We start chasing more. If the Burnout Society had a campaign slogan or a constitution, it would just be this one word: more, more, more. The more we chase more, the more complicated our lives become. And thus the ancient proverb, mo money, mo problems. Some of you are young enough to think that is actually ancient, but here's the problem with this. When we live life to the limit, you no longer enjoy your life. This is why we find ourselves saying things like, I've just got too much on my plate, or I don't know how I'm gonna balance everything on my plate. To which an outside observer may suggest, why don't you take something off your plate? But we know that's not helpful, right? When someone suggests that to you, you feel how I feel. You feel like you don't really have that choice. Because we wake up and we're still responsible for these kids. You still have to go to school and go to work, and you have these sports schedules and financial demands and all of these things that just are your life. Maybe you and your spouse are both working, or you're single and you're trying to figure out how to manage it on your own. Most of us are just trying to get to the end of the day, to get to that nightly bowl of ice cream or glass of wine or whatever your pick of poison is. But here's the good news. No matter your circumstances, no matter what you think these constraints are that gives you no control over all of this, you have more agency than you may feel. There is another option, and it's one that's available to all of us. And this is where we're heading today. While our culture today may be experiencing this at levels that perhaps the world never has before, the truth is this is not a new problem. This is something that's been baked into human nature from the very beginning, and God actually has a lot to say about this. If you look at the very beginning of the biblical narrative, what you'll find is the tale of two trees. In the book of Genesis, right there at the beginning, we find these two trees where God says, hey, there's this one tree, and this is the tree of life. And everything you need to live is right here. And then there's door number 2. There's another tree. And this tree gives you this level of power. It makes you like God. So with one tree, we get our life, we get our sustenance, we get everything we need from God. With the other one, we become like God. And what do we pick? Door number 2, obviously, because we want more. We always have. But what's beautiful is that in the book of Revelation, the very last book in the Bible, we actually get a glimpse of how this whole story will end. And it recalls back to these two trees at the very beginning. In Revelation, we read about this vision of a new heaven and a new earth that God will someday bring about. And right at the center is that first tree, the tree of life. What the Bible is claiming, what God is claiming, is that the story of the earth, the story of humankind, doesn't end with us achieving this God-like status. But in fact, it's just the opposite. That eternal life, eternal rest actually comes from eating from that tree of life, from trusting God, allowing God to take his rightful place and settling in to ours. And this is not just a future reality, this is a reality that we can step into right now. There's also another ancient story we find in the book of Genesis that reveals something really important about human tendency for this conversation. This is where we're going to spend a lot of our time today in Genesis 11, beginning in verse 1. This is how the story goes. It says, now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. Now, this sounds harmless enough so far, right? Except what they're doing is the exact opposite of what God had instructed them to do. See, what God had told them was go into all of the world, be fruitful and multiply. But what do? They find this place, Shinar, and they're like, this looks nice and cozy. Why don't we just all stay right here? They don't listen to what God had instructed them to do, but they do it their own way. Verse 3 goes on, and they said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." And they used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. And then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Otherwise, we'll just be ordinary. What they're trying to do is to make their lives matter. They're searching for significance, and that's a good instinct. But the problem is they're going about it in a way that's exactly the opposite of the way that God's laid out for them. And so God intervenes. God steps in to the story, not to mess with them, not out of jealousy, but out of wisdom and mercy. And here's the irony. Their whole fear is that they're going to be scattered throughout the whole earth. But if you skip ahead to verse 8, you see this is how the story ends. "So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth," and they stopped building the city. That's why it was called Babel, for there the Lord confused the language of the whole world and scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Here's what's happening in this story. God is protecting them from what felt good, but what wasn't ultimately good for them. God's like, no. I'm not going to allow you to just stay in this place where you're comfortable, to stay huddled up. I'm not going to allow you to spend your lives under this illusion that it's up to you to build whatever you want, because that's not going to lead where you think it's going to lead. And so he scatters them for their good. And in doing so, he creates diversity, which is so interesting to me. You know, I don't know what's going on in your life right now. But what if? What if some of the resistance that you have been experiencing in pursuit of the Burnout Society is actually God's mercy in your life? Is it possible that a good God who loves you, who knows you, who sees your family, who knows exactly what you need, would actually tear down a tower in your life because he thought it was better for you? Because he had a better vision for your life than you continuing to exceed your limits? Would a good God ever tear down a tower to protect you? He's done it before, more than once. I could tell you my story. Now here, Babel is just the beginning. You may be more familiar with its name in the Greek language, which is Babylon. Now, Babylon was a place, it was a kingdom, but Babylon is also a way. And it's a way that runs counter to the way of God. We see this all throughout the scriptures. Almost every time you see Babylon mentioned, also Egypt and Rome, what it's meant to make you think of is a reference to there is this way that is all about hurry and striving and building and climbing and keeping up. And at the same time, there is this other way, the way of God, that's about peace and rest and trust and no longer striving. That's about building tables of community where everyone is nourished instead of building towers where you're trying to claw your way to the top. And this is really the crux of what this series is all about. That if you want to, you can opt out of the Burnout Society. And over the next few weeks, we're going to get really practical about what this looks like. But before we get there, we actually need to do some digging, to go a level deeper, to get to the root of what's going on here. John Ortberg has this great quote about hurry. He says, "Hurry is not a symptom of a disordered schedule, but it's a symptom of a disordered heart." And burnout's the same way. We have to ask some honest questions about what is going on in our hearts that drives the drive that so many of us are living under. Because it can be easy to think that the solution here is just to figure out how to do less. But sometimes what we are doing actually has very little to do with why we're feeling burnout. When I think about my life a few years ago, when I was in that season of just total burnout, and my life now, the truth is I'm not really carrying less. I'm more intentional about my limits, for sure, about what I take on. I'm definitely more aware of what I'm saying yes to. But if anything, when I compare those two seasons, I'm more productive now. I'm maybe carrying more weight now. See, the problem then wasn't with what I was trying to carry. It was how I was carrying it. It was the why. It was the internal motivation behind it all. This is what we cannot miss in this tower story, is that the tower is actually an outward expression of some inner realities. You don't build a tower for no reason. Look at this again as we look back at verse 4, as they talk about, come, let us build this tower that reaches to the heaven. We get some clues about why they might be doing this, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered over the face of the whole earth. As you think about this, in your opinion, why is it that they built this tower? What do you think? Maybe it was pride. Pride that said, you know what, I'm just going to do whatever I can to make a name for myself. Maybe distrust. Just before this story in Genesis is the story of the flood. So it's not much of a leap to think that they may have had some concern for safety. Let's just build a tower so tall that no flood could ever get to us. Let's just take control. Maybe it was a lack of faith or an impatience. Maybe it was fear. How often is what we call ambition actually fear? We can know it's fear because we find ourselves saying things or thinking things like, if I do that, if we stop that, or if we start that, or we make that change, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that there won't be enough money. I'm afraid that my kids won't have the opportunities that other kids have. I'm afraid that I'll get passed up in my organization. I'm afraid that I'll end up just like my parents. I'm afraid that my family will be disappointed in me. I'm afraid that I won't be as successful. I'm afraid that God might not come through for me. And so we build these towers out of fear. Fear of falling behind, of not mattering, of missing out. Sometimes we refer to this as FOMO, this fear of missing out. It's a little bit of an old term, but it's still one that we're familiar with. And as we wrap up, I want to introduce you to a new phrase. It's actually the opposite of FOMO. That's going to be, we're going to talk about throughout this series, and it's this, NOMO. It's kind of a fun one to say, NOMO. And this is what NOMO is. NOMO is the necessity of missing out. And when I first heard this term, I didn't make this up. What I found myself thinking is, this is something that really Jesus might have said if he was, on earth now. See, Jesus regularly talked about things like denying ourselves, working less than we could, spending less than we make. Jesus said things like, everyone who leaves family or field or houses for my sake will receive 100 times as much. Those who give up their lives for my sake will surely find it. See, we think that missing out is a bad thing. But what wisdom is telling us, I think what God is inviting us to see, is that missing out is not actually a bad thing. It's a requirement. It's a must. The reality is we miss out on 99.9999% of things anyway. And so this week, I want to give you permission to begin to embrace the necessity of missing out. Because perhaps it's your fear of missing out that has actually been driving your life off the rails. Maybe the fear of missing out is the thing that has been making you exhausted and burnt out. And if you could just leave that fear behind and instead embrace the necessity of missing out, you might actually be able to catch your breath. and find a better way toward life. So as we get ready to wrap this up, here's some homework for you. Here's some questions that I would encourage you to spend some time with throughout this week. The first one is this. It's exactly where we started. Where is your emotional gauge? How are you doing really? If you picture that gas tank within you, where are you? And we all have off days. And so I think there's some value in us is finding some regular times to come back to this. Maybe this week, every day during your lunch break, or every day at a certain time in your schedule, you'll just stop for a minute and take some inventory. How am I doing? The second question that I would encourage you to spend some time wrestling with is, what is your tower? What I mean by that is this. Where is the place in your life where you are habitually exceeding your limits? We all have places where we're tempted to just blow right past them. For many of us, it's work or school, but it can be a lot of things. And so where is it for you? And maybe even more important than that, why? What is the motivation that is driving you to keep finding yourself there, to keep building that tower? Is it pride? Is it fear? Is it a desire for control? What is it? Once we've named that, then the next question that we can begin to dive into is, what do you want? What are you craving more of? Maybe a better way to think about this is, where in your life do you need some more margin? Way back in the 1800s, Robert Louis Stevenson said busyness is a symptom of deficient vitality. There's a lot of big, 1800s words there, but what he means is this. If I've lost clarity about what really matters to me, about what my life is meant to be about the deeper why of what I'm here for, what I really care about, if I have deficient vitality on the inside, then I'm gonna spend a lot of time and a lot of money searching for it on the outside. And what that looks like is busyness. And so if you have just been going so fast that you haven't stopped long enough to think about these questions in a while, what if this week you paused long enough to really consider, what do I actually want? I'm making all these choices about how I spend my time and my money, but is this actually what I care about? What is it that matters most? And for some of us, the answer to these questions is going to be really obvious. Maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, I don't need to spend time doing this week because I already know. I know that my tower is my work. And I have, over and over again been talking about how I'm aware that my time with my kids is limited and I want to lean in and be more intentional with the time that I have with them. But to be honest, I just keep talking about it and not actually making any changes. Maybe for you, you're like, you know what? My tower is my image. I've been working so hard on the image that I've been curating to project to the world, but if I'm honest, what I'm really longing for is some more genuine connection. Some of us already know what our answer to these questions are. Some of us are going to need to lean in and dig a little deeper. But once we've answered these three, then we can get to this question. What would it look like for you to embrace no-mo right now? Is there a shift that you need to make, a change in your life, something perhaps that you need to say no to for a time so that you can say yes to what really matters most? For some of us, the answer to this is going to be really practical. It may already be coming to your mind. You may already know what you need to do with this. For others of us, this is more about the internal shift. This is about kind of shifting the lens of how we're seeing our lives. Maybe you're a person that during the pandemic or during some other kind of pivotal time in your life, you've actually wrestled through a lot of this, through some similar questions. Maybe you've rearranged your life to be about the things that really matter most to you. And if that's your story, then I hope today will serve as just a bit of a checkpoint for you to just take inventory, to consider again, how am I doing? Is there anywhere that I've begun to blow past my limits, where I've started to revert back to those tower building tendencies? Am I still giving the best of who I am to what matters most? You know, for me, one way that I have experienced or been reminded of this power of embracing NOMO recently was actually just this last Sunday. Last week, my son was on spring break, and so we took a vacation for a few days, went to Florida, and we had intentionally planned that to be a shorter trip because we wanted to be back here for Easter. And I'll be honest, as we were kind of, rolling into that vacation time, I was coming in ready for a vacation. I was feeling pretty tired, and so I was excited to get there. We had a great time while we were gone, but as we got toward the end of the trip, I started to feel like, man, I really am not ready to leave. I'm still a little tired. It's so beautiful here. The weather back home is trash. There's these fun things that are happening on Saturday and Sunday. I just wish we could stay a little longer. I wish we didn't have to miss out on that concert on the beach, all these things. But of course, we came home. And then on Sunday, I got here and I got to be a part of the team out in the Commons who were right there as those who stepped up to walk through the waters of baptism came out to get ready. I got to be behind the scenes and see up close the boldness of the step they were taking, just the courage that even as they were afraid, they were like, no, you know what? I need to do this. And it was such a gift to get to be in that moment with them. To be honest with you, as a staff, we were a little nervous going into baptisms this last weekend because we didn't know how it would go. We didn't have anyone signed up in advance. We didn't have anyone planned, and so we were like, what if nobody steps up? What if people are all dressed up for Easter brunch and they don't want to take that step? And so as I saw person after person come out and take that step, I just was so overwhelmed. And then my nephew walked up, and I just, I'm done at this point. And you know what I wasn't thinking about in that moment? I wasn't thinking about the beach. I wasn't thinking about what I had been worried about missing out on just a day before, because I was reminded of not just the necessity of missing out, the joy of missing out. And this is really what this series is all about. The reason that God invites us to step into His way, to leave behind those tower-building tendencies of the Burnout Society and instead to trust Him to show us a different way forward is so that we might experience a joy, a purpose, a significance that we cannot find on our own. The band is going to lead us in just one more song that really captures where this journey begins, the posture that we have to put ourselves in if we want to opt out of the Burnout Society and opt in to God's way instead. So I want to invite you to stand and take in these words, sing them with us as we sing this.
my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. Every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to, and I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to, Jesus. Shake up the ground for my tradition, break down the walls for my religion. Your way is better, your way is better. Shake up the ground for my tradition, break down the walls for my religion. Your way is better, your way is better. Shake up the ground for my religion, break down the walls for my religion. Your way is better, your way is better. Shake up the ground for my tradition, break down the walls for my religion. Your way is better, your way is better. To do whatever you want to do whatever you want to, and I will make room for you. To do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender.
So glad you joined us today. My prayer is that God has been doing some work of shaking up some of our traditions and ways that keep us on that hamster wheel. Perhaps breathe some new hope and new life into you today. Now, if there's something going on in your life today and you would like someone to pray with you, simply text the keyword "need prayer" to 317-834-7373, and we'll be in touch with you soon to pray for you. And if you're a giver here at Crosspoint, we want to say thank you for your generosity through the Joy Box. And if you're not a giver and you'd like to become one, you can donate at this QR code or through the Give button. And just know that you and your gifts are helping people experiencing the goodness and the hope and the fresh start that God brings about through this place each and every week, including this online broadcast. So thank you. And thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time for part 2 of the Burnout Society.